Hey everybody, we're back. Whether you want us to be back or not, we're here. Episode 34. What up, everybody?
Yeah, a little delayed, absence, a little extended absence for us. We apologize. We both had
Yes.
vacation and then some family stuff happened. But hey,
Yep.
we're here. We made it back to the
We made it
microphone
back.
and the soundboard and the computers and the sports.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired of going back to my hometown. I'm just gonna get that out of the way right now.
Just don't.
I mean, kind of had to.
Nah.
It wasn't for good reasons, but I kind of had to.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Anyway,
It's okay. Anyway,
we're
lighter
back.
note, we're back.
And better than ever.
Yeah, we're allowed to say that now since that show's off the air. All right.
You know, I would like to point something out about Golick and Wingo. If you didn't know, Golick and Wingo replaced the longtime Mike and Mike radio
What?
show in the mornings on ESPN. You know how they start their show?
How?
Off the top. They still do that on Golick and Wingo.
Off the top.
They do the exact same segment that Mike and Mike did for years. It's real weird.
It's
Anyway,
very awkward.
yeah, it's real weird. As soon as I heard that, except this time it's a lady voice instead of the deep manly voice.
Off the top.
Basically.
Nice. Okay.
Anyway, we got a lot to talk about today because, college football. It's going to be an almost all college football show today.
We hope you're ready for it.
Stuff went down. A couple hours ago, the playoff committee determined what the playoff teams were going to be. And
let's just say, I'm going to get this out of the way right now. Both of us are happy about it. It's a good day. It's a good day.
So, let's go over what the heck happened. So, yesterday was, you could call it the first round of the playoffs. It was all of the conference championship games. Georgia beat Auburn.
What up?
Well done, Georgia.
Go Dogs.
Clemson routed Miami.
No, sorry, Mark Richt. Still.
Yeah, Miami was really hurt going into that game. They were missing like both their top receivers, their best running back, and their quarterback already isn't very good, Rozier. So they were banged up. I would have liked to have seen a closer game at least, but
Yeah, for Miami's sake, because they had a really, really good season too.
And if you're a Miami fan, you have to be happy. Like, you didn't expect the season to go this well. I will say that one is the game that Mark Richt usually loses. Not the one against Pitt. He usually beats Pitt. He wins the games he's supposed to win. But it's the big, tough competition games that he has trouble with. And
this is just another...
I mean, I don't want to blame it on Mark Richt. Obviously, they were outmatched on the field. They really were. Their team isn't... It's only Mark Richt's second year there.
Which is crazy. They haven't had a year that good in a long time. I can't even remember the last time they went like 10-2.
Not since the U was the U. And this is with only one Mark Richt recruiting class.
Which is only going to get better after everything they've done, because that's a really fun team to watch, and you can tell they have a lot of fun on the sidelines,
and their
too.
defense is stout.
I mean, there's a lot of defenders that are looking at some different schools, and it's like, you know what? I want a chance at the turnover chain. Let's go to the U.
And it's the U. It still has a prestige, and Mark Richt is a great recruiter.
He's a great recruiter, and you get to live in Coral Gables in Miami. Like, come on. I mean, that's a pretty big selling point.
So, Miami, they'll be fine. If you're a Miami fan, hold your head up high, be happy. It was a tough way to go out, but you can't be disappointed. Oklahoma routs TCU.
The Horned Frogs.
Sort of expected. I was hoping TCU would give them a better game, but it's really it got a little close there in the early first half. Oklahoma went up 17-0, then TCU cut it to 7. But after that, Oklahoma never looked back, and they just kept scoring. UCF beats Memphis.
There we go.
That means that, spoiler alert, UCF finishes the season as the only undefeated team. So good on them.
Good job, Scott Frost.
Unfortunately, their non-conference schedule was suspect, to say the least, so they're not going to get a shot at the playoff because they didn't play anybody.
I will have to I want to point this out. In 2 years, they went from 0-12 to 12-0, and that is very, very impressive.
With mostly the same players.
Yes, exactly.
So, Scott Frost did a hell of a job. Good work. Yeah.
Have fun in Lincoln.
Congrats, UCF. You had a great season.
Historic season for you guys.
It's unfortunate that I would love, and I've said this before, USF and UCF this year were both really good. I would have loved to have seen them play tougher non-conference games. Like, it doesn't even have to be top-tier non-conference, just like a UCF Mississippi State game.
That'd be good
would
to
be
see.
Great to watch. Like a
UCF Tennessee.
A USF Michigan game. Like, something against top-tier. Because if they had done that, you remember the year Houston beat Oklahoma?
Oh, yeah.
And then they ended up later in the year losing. But had they won out, they would have made it in the playoff because they beat Oklahoma. You have to do that as a team in the AAC. Although I will say
that competition's a lot better than it was.
I'll give the AAC a tiny bit of credit. If you don't remember, a few years ago, the Big East kind of broke apart, and the teams that didn't find their way to new conferences, such as Louisville, Syracuse, teams like that, formed back together and made the AAC. That's the best non-Power 5 conference.
Oh, hands down.
By far. Like, it's no Sun Belt. It's no WAC. Like, it's
not the MAC or anything like that.
You have 3 legit good teams in that conference in Memphis, UCF, and USF. So I do think the crap that UCF and USF are getting for not playing a tougher non-conference, like, for their strength of schedule, is a little misguided.
Because, I mean, you have to plan those games out so far in advance, and it's really not their fault. I mean, when you think about it, 3 years ago, they're wondering if they were even going to have a conference, much less, like, scheduling a game against Georgia
and their
something.
Conference games aren't cakewalks. Like, their conference is relatively tough. UConn, Cincinnati, like, these are big schools with big programs.
Think about the travel that you have to do in that conference. I mean, it's not just... I mean, the closest schools together are probably UCF and USF.
And those are real close.
Yeah.
It's a few-hour drive.
And it's... I mean, it wouldn't be if it wasn't for the traffic. But other than that...
No, it's like 50 miles apart, but it takes 5 hours to get that 50 miles.
We know that firsthand.
I-4, man. I-4. So, I do feel bad for UCF that they aren't going to get a shot, but it's to be expected. I mean, what do you get? This is why the playoff needs to be 18.
Because I would love to see a team like that get a shot.
A non-Power 5 team is never going to make it to the playoff, regardless. I don't care if every Power 5 champ has 2 losses. They are not going to put the non-Power 5 team in there. And it's unfortunate because UCF played what was on their schedule and they won every game.
Exactly. But, I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, you can't... I mean, just think about it. They weren't focused on playing a tough non-conference schedule 2 years ago when their AD left and their football coach became their athletic director, and then they went 0-12. I mean, they had so much more on their plate than any... I mean, that turnaround that Scott Frost did...
It's an incredible turnaround.
I mean...
He's got to be coach of the year.
Oh, hands down.
He has to be coach of the year. It's just unfortunate. I really wish that a couple of years ago when the Big 12 was discussing expanding, that they had taken on USF and UCF. Granted, I am a USF alum, so I'm a bit biased, but those are 2 legit football programs.
With great fan bases as well.
Big fan bases.
It's in 2 major cities and huge markets that are growing and everything. It's like...
It's the 2 biggest markets in Florida.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Tampa and Orlando. I mean, one hosts a NFL team, the other hosts an NBA team. They're big markets.
And they're always have bowl games there in each city. I mean, it would have made a lot of sense for the Big 12 to do that. And, I mean, I thought for sure they were going to add Houston, because that was, Tom Herman doing a lot at Houston, and then Houston beating up on Big 12 teams.
And the Big 12 just doesn't expand. So, I feel bad, but it happens. Ohio State narrowly beats Wisconsin. It was a great game. Ohio State looked like they were going to hand it to Wisconsin early, but Wisconsin's defense really stood up in the second half, got some turnovers, made some stops, and Wisconsin had the ball left with like a minute and a half to drive the field and win the game, and they just weren't able to do it. So it's a shame. Wisconsin, great year, but just not quite enough.
It's not quite enough, but I think we both need to give Wisconsin some credit, because I don't think either of us thought they were as good as they showed last night.
Nobody did. I mean, Wisconsin the toughest team they beat all year was Michigan, and Michigan ended up not being amazing this year.
And the only reason that game really looked tough is Michigan snuck back into the top 25 right before that game and then got
knocked
clobbered.
Right back out of it. Yeah, they really showed up against Ohio State. I thought Ohio State was going to not dominate, but I thought they were going to win by a couple scores at least, just because Ohio State has way more speed than Wisconsin, but Wisconsin really hung in there. I was impressed.
And like you were saying, I was really impressed with their defense too.
Yeah, their defense was stout. I mean, they gave up a couple big plays in the first half, but they really shored it up in the second half and looked good.
Exactly. And I thought the call to punt it away on 4th down with like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter for Wisconsin, I thought that was going to come back to bite them.
And it didn't. I did too.
Yeah.
I absolutely thought as soon as they punted, they were on like their own 40-yard line.
Right.
4th and 3.
And I was like, ooh, that's a mistake.
They had all 3 timeouts, and it was like 3.5 minutes left. And they punted. And as soon as they did that, I was like, this game's over. But no, they got the stop they needed. Their defense did its job, got the offense the ball back, and they just couldn't do anything with it.
Got the 3 and out, and yep, if Wisconsin, no offense to Sam Hornibrook, I mean, he's a decent quarterback, and he's had a good year this year for Wisconsin, but if they had, like...
he missed some throws.
He missed some throws
missed some throws
badly.
Yeah.
And if they had more of a legitimate quarterback, again, no offense to you, I mean, Hornibrook may take a next step next year or something. He's still pretty young, but it seemed like quarterback was really what they're missing.
It's no offense. I mean, it's like this in a lot of programs, including mine currently. Like, the quarterback play just in college football isn't great because there's so few good throwers of the football on the planet.
Yeah.
It's a really, really niche skill to be able to do that. That's why there's only like 10 that can do it at a high level in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
In the NFL.
To have the mental capacity side of the game too, because you also have the guys who are just freak athletes that can just sling it, but then also don't know how to read defenses and make the right throw. So. Yeah.
And that was all the games. I got to all of them, right? Yeah, I got to all of them.
Yeah.
So.
Good job. The Pac-12 championship, nobody cares.
Oh, yeah, I did miss one.
It's okay. It was a non-factor.
USC beat Stanford. So, what happened out of all of this? Well, as you can expect, Clemson, number 1, because they were number 1 before and they took care of business.
Dabo and them boys.
Number 2, Oklahoma.
Wah, wah.
I was a tad surprised they put Oklahoma 2, just because
they haven't played any defense all year.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So Oklahoma's at 2. They took care of business. Georgia moves its way to number 3. Georgia's first playoff berth. The only team in this top 4 that is new to the playoffs. So this is the first Georgia SEC championship that I've ever seen. For context, I started watching football in 2006. Watching football seriously and like understanding it, not watching games with my dad and not knowing what's going on. 2006 was my first year. I only know that because it was Matthew Stafford's true freshman year, and I can always look that up. Georgia's last SEC championship was 2005. So this was new for me, and it was great.
Wow, so you're really like a curse for the Bulldogs.
Yeah. My dad and I had a wonderful emotional moment.
That was great
I hope
witness.
You enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed it, and I was trying to get that on video, and then my Snapchat cut out right when y'all actually started doing something. Because you two were just talking.
We were chest bumping and embracing, and then my dad jumped in a cold pool. It was great.
I seriously thought you or your dad was going to fall into the fire pit. I was seriously worried about that's why that was really when I was like starting to record, because that was a lot of bodies going at each other right in front of a fire pit, and I was like, oh, one of y'all is going to fall in there, and I'm going to be the one with the camera, and then hopefully like Tyler or Craig will save you, but I mean, I'll at least have the memories for you.
And I'm a Georgia fan, so we're going to stop on Georgia here a minute. I know we were moving along. This is probably the second best Georgia team I've ever seen. I still think the 2007 Georgia team with Matthew Stafford, Mohamed Massaquoi, Noshawn Marino, that was the best Georgia team I've seen. That was the one that propelled Matthew Stafford to being the number 1 overall pick regardless. It was his sophomore year. Didn't matter what he did his junior year. He looked so good his sophomore year. Yeah, this team is really good, and I'm very excited to show Oklahoma how to play defense.
Oh, all right.
It will be by far the toughest defense that Oklahoma has faced, maybe in the last couple of years. So it's good. I'm looking forward to it. And then number 4. One might expect that Ohio State would get the number 4 spot. I mean, they're nationally recognized as being a great team.
Historic program.
They beat and won against Wisconsin, who was the only remaining Power 5 unbeaten to win the Big Ten, which some consider to be the best conference in college football.
Their athletic director is on the selection committee.
Their athletic director may or may not be on the team of 13 people that choose this list of 4. Alabama
Woo!
with the number 4 spot.
Woo!
I was shocked.
Roll Tide, baby.
I was shocked and very happy. So why would Alabama get the spot? Well, Alabama was number 1 basically all season long. And I mean, the committee obviously thinks Bama's better than Ohio State. What more can you say?
Honestly, because Auburn is a very, very good football team. I don't think anybody who's not just an SEC basher would admit that Auburn is a dang good football team.
I think Auburn is probably the 3rd best team in college football.
And I
legit 3rd or 4th. Like, they're way up there.
Like, if it was an 8-team playoff, Auburn's in my opinion.
If it was a 6-team playoff, I think Auburn gets in.
It's just, they're very good, and the thing where a lot of people were discrediting Alabama is Jalen Hurts hasn't looked the best, especially in tougher games, but I mean, even last year, he didn't really look that great. It was just, whenever there was some big play that needed to be made, Jalen Hurts found a lane and ran it in. I mean, that's just what he does. And this year, it hasn't been as evident. I mean, I think part of that's Lane Kiffin.
I will say he did do that all season long until the Auburn game. You think back to the Mississippi State game. That's exactly what he did. He looked mediocre all game, and then for the game-winning drive, they just drove right down the field and scored, and it looked great.
Again, when Wisconsin decided to punt on 4th down, I immediately thought back to Dan Mullen doing that against Alabama, and I was like, dude, your defense is just wrecked right now. I mean, it's not the same guys. Like, I know your defense has been standing up for you all game, but I don't think you can do that in this situation. And it came back to bite him. But I think a lot of what happened is people didn't think Alabama really played anybody because of what happened to Florida State.
Yeah, it's important to remember that when Alabama played Florida State, which I think the committee must have looked at this.
I think they had to have.
Florida State was a top 10 team.
A title contender.
Regardless of what's happened since then, that game, they lost so many players to injuries. They were just out of it. But Francois is legit.
Francois looked good against Alabama.
He is legit good. And I really hope he comes back really strong next year because he'll definitely be a Heisman contender and an NFL draft. You know, he's first round talent. He's got a cannon, great footwork,
great release.
The only thing I feel bad about for him is usually it's the sophomore year where you take a big leap in your execution and your knowledge and your understanding of the game, and he's lost that.
And you know what? I think Francois is going to be okay because he seemed to have shown a lot of maturity on the field. And honestly, just this kind of a side note, the whole Jimbo Fisher situation and what happened where he didn't seem to speak to Francois and he was blindsided by it, I think that's going to be really big for him because I think he's going to really remember that. And it's going to help his development because he's going to be playing angry now and try to prove Jimbo wrong for leaving and kind of basically bailing on the program is what Francois seems to feel like he did.
Really hope he does. So, your final 4. Clemson versus Alabama.
The rematch.
In the Sugar Bowl for the semifinals.
3 years in a row. Let's go.
And then Oklahoma, Georgia in the Rose Bowl for the other semifinal. It's going to be a good New Year's Eve. I'll just leave it at that.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a good time. I want nothing more than a Georgia Bama. We've been saying
yes.
This isn't how we predicted we would get here, but if you would remember, we did talk about when Georgia and Bama were 1-2,
Yep.
both undefeated. If they saw each other in the playoff and one knocked the other out, saw each other in the SEC championship, one knocked the other out, they would still both get into the playoff. It's not exactly how we got here.
That's not exactly how we got here. That pesky Gus Malzahn had to screw things up. But we still got here.
We made it. And we're in a situation where it could be in the first playoff while the Rollout show has existed, our two teams go at each other.
Woo.
I feel like I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I'm worried about Oklahoma. I also think Clemson might be the best team in the country.
Clemson's pretty dang good.
So I'm a little bit more worried about Bama advancing than Georgia. Not to hate on your team.
No, honestly, I completely agree with you because Clemson's darn
legit
good.
This year.
Clemson's dang good, and Dabo is one heck of a coach. And I honestly think he's the second best coach in college football right now.
I think that's fair. It's more than fair.
He's really, really good. He's very good, and that's a great program. And
that he's built himself.
And if there's anybody who wants to beat Alabama more than pretty much even Auburn or any other team, it is Clemson. Yeah, that's a big rivalry going on right now.
But
it's good.
If it becomes a Georgia-Alabama national championship, we'll have to do some sort of bet.
Oh, yes,
something.
we will. We'll have to do
I don't know
something.
what. One will have to grease up the other naked. I don't know what.
Okay, I wasn't going there,
but it's going to be a good time.
Okay. Oof.
Now, I'm very, very excited.
I'm so pumped for this. I mean, see Jalen Hurts versus Kirby Smart's defense. Saban versus Kirby.
Let's do preview real quick. Clemson, Alabama. What do you expect to happen?
I expect it to be a pretty close game. Something like, 32-28, something like that.
Basically like the two national championships.
Like the two national title games, exactly. That's what I expect it to be. It's two much younger squads than they were, the previous 2 years, but, I mean, you see the talent level in both of those teams. I mean, they're not missing much. And I honestly think Jalen Hurts' experience last year is going to help him. Like I said, he hasn't looked the best. He's had new offensive coordinators, everything like that. But I think the experience he had last year can only help him.
And not having to play against Deshaun Watson is great.
Oh, absolutely.
Kelly Bryant's real good, too.
No, he's very good.
He's not as good yet. He's a freshman. He's very good. He'll be fine.
I think we all need to get used to seeing Bama and Clemson because it's probably going to keep happening for the next few years.
Unless Saban retires.
Yeah, that's the big caveat. Unless Saban retires.
What Kirby's probably telling all the recruits.
Hey, if you go there, Saban might retire while you're there.
Well, and the thing is, Kirby would know more than anyone.
When Saban wants to retire.
No assistant has ever been as close to Saban as Kirby.
I mean, they were together forever.
Kirby is like Saban's all-time favorite assistant. That's absolutely not an overstatement.
No, it's very true.
It's the only time I've ever seen Nick Saban get emotional is when Kirby left. And if I'm Kirby, hey. I know Nick Saban pretty well. He says he's going to retire next year. Just tell every recruit that. Why not?
You liar. You liar. And I will give Saban some credit, though. He is showing a whole lot more emotion than he used to these past few years. He's actually smiling now.
Is he really?
He smiles occasionally, and he actually laughs a little bit. I think it's because he's a grandfather now, so he's kind of softened up a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Grandpa Saban.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a feeling that Clemson might win a shootout there.
I honestly, I can see that happening. It's if Jalen Hurts has to be the one to win the game, and I mean he has in the past, I will have to give him credit, but he wins it with his legs. He doesn't win it with his arm.
No.
And
I don't know if it's his decision making or what, but He just struggles through the air.
His decision making is pretty solid overall because, I mean, he really limits the turnovers, which I have to really appreciate, and I'm sure Saban really appreciates. But he seems to not be able to make the huge throw. He's done it in the past, but a lot of times he seems to overthrow guys. He has all the arm strength in the world and all the talents there. It's the touch, exactly.
All right, Oklahoma, Georgia. What do you expect?
Baker Mayfield to be crying on the sidelines.
Oh, nothing would make me happier. Oklahoma plays in the Big 12. No one in the Big 12 plays defense. Georgia probably has the second or third best defense in college football. I don't think Georgia's going to be able to shut down Oklahoma. They're really fast offensively. I do expect them to not do what they've been doing against other teams, which is score like 50 points a game.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, to give credit to Oklahoma, they are very, very well coached and very skilled offensively. Like you said, it's just they haven't faced anything close to this kind of defense. The best defense they played is Ohio State, and Ohio State didn't have that great of a defense.
I also don't think they've seen a running attack as good as Georgia has.
No.
Georgia, if you haven't watched them play, has 5 legit college running backs. At least 3 of which are going to play on Sundays, if not all 5.
And they're all pretty unique as well.
They're all different. Like, you have Chubb, who is the pounder. He's not very...
bowling ball.
He's the bowling ball. He doesn't go... He's not going to get you a 60-yard run, but he'll get you 2 yards anytime you need it. Then you have Michelle, who is probably the most balanced, and he's a senior. He's going to be playing on Sundays. He's really good. Then you have Swift, who's
quick.
He's Swift.
Swift.
He's the third down back, really good out of the backfield. You have Harrion, who's another pretty good all-around back. And then you have Holyfield, who his name's Holyfield. That's all you need.
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
His dad is Evander, if you were wondering.
And if there were any fights happening on the field, he's the guy you want going into battle.
Holyfield. So, Georgia's run game is real good. Georgia's passing game is not good. I don't want to get into a shootout. I'm expecting it to be like a 24-21 type game where Oklahoma just gets a few ones past the Georgia secondary. I think it'll be a good game. I hope Georgia shuts them down.
This is really going to be a big test and indicator for NFL teams on Baker Mayfield, because this is going to be the toughest defense he's ever seen and the toughest defensive schemes he's gone up against. And
especially when Kirby has an entire month.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it'd be one thing if it was the championship game where there's only a week of preparation, but for this semifinal, there's legit 4 weeks before that game happens.
Oh, exactly. And, over the next month, let's just say Baker Mayfield may have some other things going on in his life. But we'll just say that it's going to be a big indicator for his future in the NFL, because it's going to really test his decision-making, because he's just run over teams this year. I mean, they had Ohio State. That was, a good win for them. But then other than that, he struggled against Iowa State, and Iowa State's defense is nothing close to Georgia's.
In his entire career, I don't think he's faced a defense quite like this.
Oh, no. And it's really going to show his decision-making skills, because usually, he has somebody wide open all the time. So it'll really go to show his maturity level, which, as we've seen to this point, has been kind of lacking.
I'm very excited. It's going to be a good time.
You're just ready to see Baker Mayfield hopefully get beat down.
Oh, I'm so ready. Speaking of which, do you have anything else to add before we move on to our next topic?
I do not have anything else to add.
College football is crazy. It's a great sport. It's a great time. Pay the players. All right. Next topic.
You jerk. You jerk.
The Heisman.
You pushing your agenda over there.
I'm not pushing any agenda. I'm pushing what I believe is fair. The Heisman.
As I was mentioning Baker Mayfield's distractions over the next month, he's probably going to win the Heisman.
Yeah. No, he's going to win the Heisman. 100% he's winning the Heisman.
I got to have a sliver of hope that Lamar Jackson or somebody can just squeak in there.
So ESPN has a Heisman watch where they poll people that both have actual votes and don't have votes. And they have, in order, Baker Mayfield, Bryce Love, Lamar Jackson, Rashad Penny, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Kerryon Johnson. So, at this point, you and I both agree that Saquon Barkley is the best player in college football, correct?
Agree, absolutely.
He had like 2 not good games, and that's ruined. And the fact that Penn State lost to Ohio State has really ruined his chances. And it's a shame.
And honestly, it's not even his fault that at that loss to Ohio State. They shouldn't have lost to Ohio State at all.
No,
it's just they got sloppy at the end and then let Ohio State come back.
Mm-hmm. So, Bryce Love, running back for Stanford, it's one of those things where, like, every Stanford running back is good.
They're like all Wisconsin. Good. It's like Wisconsin. Every year there's a Wisconsin running back, it seemed like, for like the few years there around Melvin Gordon and Monte Ball and everything.
And where then the team finishes 9-3.
Exactly. It's the exact same thing. It's like, oh, wow, this really good running back for Stanford's breaking all these records.
Seemingly came out of nowhere.
And then it's like, oh, okay, Stanford has some pretty good games. Oh, wow, surprising upset win there. Lost to a nobody. And then they get to the Pac-12 championship game and lose. So it's, I mean, always finishing in the 20s or something.
Lamar Jackson somehow has snuck his way back into this conversation.
Just like Bobby Petrino sneaking back into a promising coaching career, Lamar Jackson has snuck back into the Heisman. Thank you.
Nicely done. I mean, Lamar Jackson is really good, but his team so underperformed this year. He's got to be able to carry them to more wins.
And honestly, in Louisville's defense, it shouldn't have played a factor, but that whole Rick Pitino stuff.
Oh, it absolutely did.
I mean, there's no way it didn't.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, because, I mean, these guys know the basketball team. They're friends with the basketball team, and that kind of stuff ripples through the college.
They're all friends and everything, because in college athletics, you have some of your own areas where you all hang out.
And you have your own
cafeteria,
dorms.
Own dorms and everything. They know these guys. Absolutely. They probably all talked to Rick Pitino.
And you think the media didn't ask them questions about this?
Oh, absolutely. It's
a huge distraction. So, you're right. That is a deserved excuse for them. But still, Lamar Jackson has to be better. Like, he's great, but when you're a great quarterback in college, you can carry your team on your back.
Oh, absolutely.
And more so than in the pros or something. You got to get more wins. You have to, instead of just padding your stats all the time.
That's kind of an interesting question, though. Do you think he's going to stay for senior year?
He has to. And it's evident that he really worked on his throwing this season because I think he wanted to go pro. He's not ready. If he did, he'd get drafted. He'd probably be like a 3rd-round pick just because someone would take him on as a project. But unless he was willing to switch positions, I don't think he should come out this year.
And you don't want to end up being like Brad Kaya last year, who a lot of people thought had an outside shot, maybe 2nd rounder, 3rd rounder, and then you fall all the way to the 7th.
I will say the difference, though, is Brad Kaya really wasn't a project. He just was what he was. And he just fell farther than anyone expected.
Right.
Because he was a decent quarterback prospect. Lamar Jackson is a project, similar to if Braxton Miller had refused to change positions out of Ohio State a couple years ago, he would have been a project.
Kind of like a Terrell Pryor.
Tim Tebow was a project. Terrell Pryor, a project. And some of these guys work out, and most of them don't. These guys that are super athletic, but don't throw the ball incredibly well. We're going to see that with Quentin Flowers this year from USF, who's a dynamic college player. I think it's ridiculous that he
isn't in the conversation.
I think he should be a Heisman finalist.
Oh, he should.
Dude is
amazingly good.
He was 85% of USF's offense this year. I don't think that stat is accurate. I just made it up, but it feels
Sounds about right. Good job. Good stat.
He threw for 500 yards against UCF, in the air, and he won't make it in the NFL. I don't even know if he's going to be able to make it at a different position, but in college, he's a dynamic, amazing quarterback that should have been a Heisman finalist this year. These guys, it's tough in the NFL because you can get away with running in college. In the NFL, you have to have accuracy and a strong arm, and you got to be able to put it in spots around the field that not many people on this planet can do.
Right.
It's
and
tough.
It's very tough, and it's going to be interesting to see. I really hope he does stay in college just because of that fact, because I like Lamar Jackson.
I do too.
I want to
He's
see
a
him
good
succeed.
guy. Yeah.
I really do, and because I also think he'd be really fun to watch if he just continued to work on his passing skills. I feel like he'd be really fun to watch at the next level.
Michael Vick-like.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the easiest comparison to make. He plays like Michael Vick.
Oh, he does.
Except he tucks the ball.
Yeah.
When he runs.
And he's a little bit bigger.
Is he bigger than Michael Vick?
Yeah, I think he's taller.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mike Vick was kind of small, wasn't he?
The
Anyway.
dude was amazing.
Yeah. Saquon Barkley,
It's
he's not going to win it. It's a shame. After the first half of the season, we were basically calling it a lock, the same way we did with Fournette a couple years ago.
Yes.
Or was that last year that we were calling Fournette?
No, at the beginning of the year it was a lock, yeah, Fournette. And then like a couple of years prior when everybody said, well, no reason to think about the Heisman finalist because Geno Smith has got it locked up. Remember that?
Oh, God. That West Virginia team with Tavon Austin.
Yep, Tavon
Team
Austin,
was horrible.
Stedman Bailey. Oh, man.
Oh, that team. All right. That's the Heisman. Baker Mayfield.
Unfortunately. Sorry.
Baker Mayfield's going to win.
If you haven't noticed, neither of us really like Baker Mayfield
I mean,
all that much.
look, he's fine. I don't dislike him as much as you do. I just think he's overrated, personally.
I agree. I hate to give the comparison, but he really is the Johnny Manziel mold. He has a better arm than Manziel, I'd say, but he came from the Cliff Kingsbury system. He was at Texas Tech, left for Oklahoma. I don't really remember the reasons why he got out of Texas Tech, but he left there. He's just that same mold of quarterback, and then you kind of bring the kind of off the field, seemingly kind of immature stuff into it as well, and then...
Yeah, I don't know. When has he brought that kind of stuff onto the field? He does stuff like planting the Oklahoma flag at Ohio State. I thought that was hilarious.
I did think that was funny.
I thought that was
I thought that was
great.
kind of funny.
He does stuff like grab his crotch sometimes, and you don't love that kind of stuff from your quarterback, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I'm way more concerned about his play on the field just because I think he's overrated because of the competition he's faced.
Absolutely, because his numbers look amazing, but it's one of those things, if you transferred his numbers to a different conference, what would they look like?
Not like that. I can guarantee you that.
Even if he played in the Big Ten or even Pac-12, I don't think they'd look like that.
And maybe the Pac-12.
I try to give them a little bit of credit. I mean, Stanford plays defense, sort of.
That's about it, though. All right, that's the Heisman. College football season, over. The regular season is done. The bowl season's coming, which seems to have more games than the regular season.
Right.
But the regular season of college football is over. Feels like it just started. It was a good season, I would say. I'm quite pleased.
Oh, it was awesome. But you know what season's coming up now?
Oh, God. What season?
The coaching carousel season.
Oh, and by coming up, you mean it already started, right?
It's already started, yeah. There's some overlap. But there's one big situation that has just been a crap show. And that's the University of Tennessee.
Please, what has happened at the University of Tennessee?
Well, let's just say there's a first-year athletic director named John Curry.
Like 7 months on the job, right?
7 months on the job. He's, trying to mold his university and program here. So he decides to try to go after John Gruden. Doesn't seem like it's working out.
As reported by the Rollout show.
And our official sources.
If you recall, John Gruden is holding out because he wants the Titans job.
That's right.
All right, please continue.
Okay, back to my thought. John Curry. He's going places. He's talking to different coaches. There's different coaches that are still coaching on other teams while Butch Jones is still there. Still trying to hire him. Fires Butch Jones. Try to bring in Gruden. Doesn't work out. Next call, Greg Schiano. Did really great at Rutgers. Doing okay at Ohio State.
Had an 11-win season at Rutgers. That's what got him the Tampa Bay job. That's an incredible season
and
at Rutgers.
Honestly, they had a lot of NFL talent from Rutgers, if you remember.
A ton of NFL talent.
It was amazing what Shiano did, and he deserves some credit for that. Whether you like him as a coach or a person or not, he deserves credit for that.
Absolutely. He did an amazing job at Rutgers. I bet they would take him back in an instant.
Yeah, because Rutgers has been sorry since and was sorry before he got there.
Yeah.
But anyway, hire Greg Schiano. Everybody's happy, it seems like, in the department. They're flying to Columbus to get him to sign the papers. Then...
He does sign the papers.
Yeah, right. They're in Columbus to sign the papers. My bad on that. And then Clay Travis strikes. Reporter. Very close to Knoxville. Clay Travis strikes. Then the students protest over the allegations at Penn State, which was kind of found that there wasn't really any evidence to Schiano wrongdoing. But
basically what happened was, during the Sandusky thing, which the Sandusky thing, if you don't know, is the biggest college scandal of all time, where one of their assistant coaches was molesting children at program, like at the team facilities and stuff. Real not okay.
Awful.
That dude's a jerk. Screw that guy. The whistleblower of the whole thing testified that another coach had been told by Schiano that Schiano witnessed Sandusky doing something with a little boy. So it's basically
double
hearsay, where one coach tells another coach that he heard from another coach that Sandusky was doing something. The coach, Schiano, obviously denied.
Right.
And the coach...
McQueary, who was the whistleblower on the whole thing?
The coach that supposedly told McQueary about Schiano telling him about the Sandusky thing denied that it ever happened.
Right.
And no files against Schiano were ever placed. Nothing ever happened with Schiano. There was absolutely no evidence other than this double hearsay that anything happened with Schiano.
And with how big that investigation was, if there was anything to even...
just a little tidbit.
Then Schiano would have been cited.
Destroyed. And I don't remember who, so forgive me, but during one... I don't even remember what show I heard it on, but there was a reporter that was super, super deep into the Sandusky trial, and he came out and said, if there was any evidence whatsoever that Schiano had done anything, I would have buried him. But there wasn't.
Yeah,
there was no evidence. And the Bucks clearly did their own investigating, thought it was okay. Urban Meyer did his own investigating, thought it was okay.
Ohio State, the university, everything.
Right. So, and every coach vouches for Schiano. So, it would appear that Schiano did no wrong. At least, that's the way we have to assume it happened.
Right. And so, all this stuff goes on at Tennessee. All the Tennessee fans seem to be up in arms about it. And then they have the paper signed and everything. John Curry gets somebody else to go tell Schiano, hey, we're backing out of our side of the contract. Sorry, you're not going to be the coach here at Tennessee. Then this just explodes from there, because then there's the whole situation. Schiano can sue the University of Tennessee.
For a contract worth about $40 million, by the way.
Yes, which would be a lot of dead money on those Tennessee taxpayers.
It's fine, though. You don't have to pay the players.
You just always have to jump in there, don't you?
Go ahead. One day we're going to have the Should You Pay the Player show.
It'll be 3 hours, and we may not even part as friends. Anyway, I'm just kidding. We'll still part as friends, I hope. Don't kill me.
I mean, we'll see if you form the correct opinion, because you're blatantly wrong about this.
Correct opinion. Thank you.
Look, man, you brought us here. How is it okay that Kirby Smart wins or gets a bonus of $500,000 for his players going out on the field and destroying themselves, and he didn't have to do that? Sony Michel hurt his knee. That could have been a severe injury and took crazy money away from him in his NFL career. Kirby Smart didn't have to risk that. And what do they get?
They did in the past.
They got a free trip.
Player.
They got a free trip to Atlanta. Well, good for him.
He risked that when he was a player, which led to him starting his coaching career, which led to him being in this situation.
That's absolutely not true because plenty of people that weren't players at big programs or for long periods of the time become coaches. That's absurd.
Still played football. Just saying.
That has
There's a
nothing
risk.
to do with it.
Can we get back to Tennessee?
No, because now you made me mad. Fine, but you are inherently wrong. Look, if your boss... Okay, no. Follow me here.
Go for it.
If you're on a team, right? You're on a team. Think about where you work right now. Okay?
Okay. Yes.
And you make the organization, personally, millions of dollars.
Okay.
And your boss gets a $500,000 bonus for his good work. And you get nothing.
That's how the world works, yes.
No, that's absolutely not how the world works. If you think that it would actually happen like that, you're crazy. And if you
make the company a $500,000, because let's be honest here.
It's not a $500,000 that they just made the University of Georgia. Just as an example, we'll go for my team to make it as unbiased as possible.
Okay.
The University of Georgia just profited. Why do you think they would offer a bonus of $500,000? You think they're only gonna make $500,000 back? No, they're making millions and millions and millions of dollars because not only do you get the ad revenue from being in the playoff, but you get the national notoriety, which convinces more students who pay tuition to come to your school. Then you can make your facilities bigger. You bring in more students. Yada 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 yada.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you think that's the way the world works. Like I mean,
it does. If I go out there and come up with something, and then I'm doing it for my company, and then that company makes a lot of money, and I get some recognition, I may get a little promotion, but other than that, it doesn't necessarily mean like, well, you made the company $500,000, so here's $500,000.
No, you just did it again. You didn't make the company $500,000.
Okay, I made the company $50 million.
Put it at $50 million.
50 million.
Yes.
Okay, so
you made the company $50 million, and you get nothing. You're gonna keep working for that company? You think that's
not
okay?
Not necessarily.
That's the problem, though. These players can't just move. Because what else are they going
to the NFL if they want to, if they're good enough?
When they've played enough years, when they put in
oranges.
Yes, it is.
But that's the thing. You have to put in the work in your company to get to that point.
And you're getting paid to do it. This is the problem.
See, this is our disconnect because, okay, here we go.
What did you throw? Don't throw things at my... Okay.
Here's the situation. Would you play football for an education? Would you play on the University of Georgia's football team if you got the chance to go to the school for free? Would that be enough for you? Or would you say, you know what, I need 50 G's to come to Georgia? Would you? Let's say that. Would you?
I'll answer your question with the question. Well, okay, for one, what's the alternative if you want to play football for a living? What's the alternative? There is none.
You go to Canada. Something.
No, you can't go to Canada at 18. No.
You can choose not to play in college and then go to the, combine, do an Adam Thielen thing.
No. What is a legit alternative? Okay, what's the definition of that? That means college football is a monopoly.
Yeah.
Which, for one, is illegal in this country, but that's okay. We don't have to go into that.
It's a government-regulated system. That's why it was set up that way, because people kept dying, so they needed a governing body. It was set up by Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s. That's how this happened.
Roosevelt.
I mean, that's seriously how it was set up, because nobody was governing or making rules, and kids kept dying. That's how the NCAA was formed.
So, I think we just have a disconnect in the value of an education.
Right.
That's
really what the disconnect is, because I think really value an education.
$30,000 over 4 years of illiquid education is not a fair compensation for going on a field and getting your brains rattled for other people who are benefiting millions of dollars off of your hard work. That's really, for me personally, and maybe this is the disconnect. Maybe I have a higher, more utopian view of what I will require my employment to be like, okay? If I were in a situation, like I've described to you, where me and my team work our butts off. And my manager works her butt off too. Like I don't want to imply that these coaches aren't doing anything. I actually think the coaches are being fairly compensated.
Right.
I have no problem with the money they make because they are assisting in millions and
they're
millions
really
and millions.
the CEO of the football program.
They're arguably the CEO of the school, depending on
Yeah.
how big the football program is.
Nick Saban is.
So Nick Saban is probably the most powerful person in Alabama.
No doubt.
So if my team worked for a year and we grinded and we worked and it affected like we work, you can even say just 40 hours a day. If you think the kids are only putting 40 hours a week, 40 hours a day would be
oh, wow, that's some
incredible.
overtime.
40 hours a week, and if you think all the college kid is putting in is 40 hours a week, that's incorrect. But so you're putting in a solid 40 hours a week, you're working your butt off, and at the very end you come up with, I'll just use my example, I'm a programmer. We come up with this amazing application that saves my company $5 million a year, okay, through all of this.
Okay.
And I'm being paid my normal wage. And then at the end, my manager is offered a $500,000 bonus for assisting in saving the company so much, and we're given cup holder. I would quit on the spot.
Good for you.
Like, so the problem is there is no alternative. If this college system wants to exist and wants to be like this, that's fine. But there's no alternative for these guys, a lot of which are coming from the hood, okay? And they're desperately trying to claw their way out of poverty, and this is the best option for them.
Right.
And you are expecting these people with literally no other choice to just be okay with screwing them over. Like, just because a system has always been in place and because it seems to be working doesn't mean it's not broken. And just because something seems really complex and I can't give you exactly how it should be fixed doesn't mean that it shouldn't be looked at.
Well, I'm just saying it's like, I agree with that. It can be looked at and it needs to be looked at and there can be edits to it, but honestly, what other alternative is there? Are you going to make like some amateur football league out of nowhere?
Yes.
Who's going
I
to
would
put the money
love
for
that to happen.
I mean, go for it.
The SEC. I would love that.
There we go. SEC just leaves NCAA. We solved our problem.
I would be so happy.
See, that's just the thing with.
I just think it needs to be separated from this idea of university. Plus, because universities have their own problems right now with the tuition gouging and the student debt crisis that's going to make this country go into another recession like the housing bubble did.
Exactly, because every company, I mean, everybody's like, you have to go get a college degree. You going to college, like all this stuff. So,
and then when you go, you have to go $40,000 into debt minimum, and then you come out. And I'm not saying the players need to pay paid 7-figure salaries. That's not what I'm saying. And there's obviously a problem of how do you determine how much the star players get versus the backup players, because there's 75
versus
people.
The backup long snapper or something?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are problems. I think the problem is, as is required in capitalism, okay, you need market competition. There is literally no competition. If there was, even the NFL technically has competition because
you think so?
Because technically, a guy could go to Canada and play in the CFL. It's what Tebow should have done to prove he could play in the NFL. It's what guys do. It's an alternative where you can make a living doing something. There is no other organization other than the NCAA that you can quote unquote work for to make a living.
And honestly, I don't know if that's really necessarily the NCAA's problem. Because
I don't think it's the NCAA's problem. I think it's the country's problem. Like, monopolies, there's a reason they're illegal, because this happens, where you have a system where unless an outside entity were to go in, why would the NCAA do anything? They benefit the most from this system.
Well, exactly, and also the NFL benefits a ton from this as well. So that's why
the
it's
NFL
set up
gets
this way.
a free minor league system.
Exactly. So they don't have to actually, like Major League Baseball, where you have to pay.
I don't
people.
understand why you're okay with millionaires screwing over college kids. That's really what it comes down to.
Because we just have a very big disconnect on the fundamentals of each issue. Because honestly, if I got a full ride to go to school and I got to play football, I'd be pretty happy about it. I mean, that's all I got to say. If that's like, for some guys, that's their only chance at going to college. And you get to go from somewhere where it's a bad situation potentially, and you get to go and play in, let's say, Columbus, Ohio, in front of hundreds of thousands of fans who adore you and love you. And then you can potentially go to the NFL and make a lot of money there. Or if not, you can become an Ohio State icon and basically make endorsement deals all the time because you're a Buckeye legend.
Or you can be so focused on football that you lose track of your other studies because you're only at college to play football, and then in 4 years you're done with college and you're back home with a degree that you didn't really earn because the college intentionally gave you an easy route so that you could stay on the football team and qualify.
And there's some places that are like that.
Every place is like that. Let's not be ridiculous.
There's not.
Every place has.
Stanford is like that.
Okay.
Stanford, Vandy.
Stanford, the academic schools clearly are not. But any program, really other than Stanford, that has had a large amount of success, they have programs set up to give athletes an easy track so that they can qualify for their football teams.
There's that degree at like every school. You see it more with athletes. There's like the athletics degree in some different places. UNC has gotten into trouble with this in the past.
UNC has gotten into trouble with this.
Yeah, UNC.
Oh,
that's what I said.
Sorry.
No, you're good. But yeah, UNC has gotten in trouble with this in the past with the Rashad Williams, I believe was his name. His scandal coming out saying that he never went to class. He was a former NBA player. But there's also like that degree at a lot of schools. It's a different name, but there's people what's the quickest path to a degree?
So and what value does that serve the student?
For some people, if they already have something locked up, where I had a friend, she had a great job already before she had graduated, and she had a lot of experience because.
What does that have to do with this?
Well, she didn't have her degree yet, so she took the quickest path to a degree, and they said, look, we'll keep you on here full time as long as you have a degree.
And you think that's common? Because it's not.
No, I mean, believe me, I know that's not very common, but there's some people, it just depends on what you do with your degree. I mean, there's also a lot of people who will go and, there's some people go out and get like a physics degree and then end up running a coffee shop or something. I mean,
obviously, and that goes to my point that I think college degrees are super overvalued. And if I had to do it again, I may not have gone to college. I may have just gotten certifications and whatnot and saved myself a few tens of thousands of dollars. My point is, we need to get off this subject because clearly we aren't going to agree and you're going to stay wrong. Yes, the system is better than if there was no system. Obviously, if I wanted to play football, I would want to go play for Georgia, go to college for free because it's the best situation there is. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a more fair, better system put in place. I don't like the idea of rich old dudes making young people hit each other's heads so that they can profit and not pay them. I mean, at least pay them minimum wage. Come on.
Anyway, back to Tennessee.
Where were we with Tennessee?
So,
you're welcome.
Whatever happens...
that was completely your fault. You could have just agreed with me and we could have moved on.
No. I'm not just going to agree with you when I vehemently disagree with you.
So wrong.
Anyway, back to John Curry. So, he decides to go back to Tennessee without Greg Schiano. Look for other candidates. Checks back in with Gruden.
Oh, yeah, that's where we are.
Yep, checks back in with Gruden. Yeah, thank you. Checks back in with Gruden. Nope, not happening. Okay. You know who'd be good? That guy out in Oklahoma with the mullet. Let's go talk to Mike Gundy. He's a man. Let's get a man to coach this football team. So, go out to Stillwater, Oklahoma. Meet with Mike Gundy. He says thanks, but no thanks.
Whoa. Let's not be crazy. He entertains the idea
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Oklahoma State offers him a raise, and then
That's
he says
right.
thanks, but no thanks.
Which is another part of the game
But
here.
the players definitely didn't get any of that
Oh,
money.
shut up with that. I will move the mic away from you right now. Enough with your tangents. Anyway, I'm talking Tennessee here. So, John Curry has to fly back to Knoxville. Hat in hand, goes back to the drawing board. Dan Mullins, already been hired by Florida. Scott Frost, worst kept secret in college football. He's already going to Nebraska. Willie Taggart, he's not moving. He already signed an extension. So you're running out of options. Then everybody you try to talk to, NC State head coach. I forgot how to pronounce his name at the time. So, NC State head coach. On the hot seat going into the year. You know what? He might consider Tennessee. Why not? Goes to him. Turns down the offer. There's some rumors of Phil Fulmer going through back channels sabotaging his search. Talks to Mike Leach. Mike Leach is somehow uninterested. Why? He just talked to Phil Fulmer. Told him don't go there. And now Phil Fulmer is coming for your job. And then 2 days later, Phil Fulmer has your job and you're looking for a buyout. John Curry lost his job in 7 months and Phil Fulmer is now the AD. And I would not be shocked if he comes down to the sidelines and coaches them boys up.
Yeah, over under. How many weeks do you think it takes for him to become the coach next year?
I think it takes about 1/4 of the spring game.
I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to legit hire himself.
He was so hacked off when he got shown the door, and I feel like he's been working the past few years to try to get back.
Just whispering every time something bad happens. Remember when I was the coach?
Remember when we were good?
Do you remember
we had
Peyton Manning? Do you remember Peyton
You remember
Manning?
T. Martin?
I can make another Peyton Manning. Do you remember Peyton Manning?
You remember we were only good when I was here? Remember that? Remember? Yeah. I feel like he's honestly been potentially sabotaging the search ever since he left.
He might. He's got a lot of pull in that state.
And honestly, I think when Lane Kiffin was just a straight up hire, I think that was a good hire, and then he just left for his dream job.
Yeah.
But I think since then, he's kind of really sabotaged Tennessee in a way, which is kind of how they ended up with Butch Jones, who even a lot of Tennessee fans weren't really pumped about at first because they thought they had better options. I think he's really been working in the background for a long time, and now he's finally got all the power.
The problem is who's left.
T. Martin. USC offensive coordinator, Tennessee Volunteer legend. Led him to the 98 national championship.
Yeah, that'd be an obvious choice.
Honestly, that's the only guy I can think of left. I mean, you're not going down the Lane Kiffin route, even though a lot of Vols fans want him to come back. Lane Kiffin is sitting there trolling Vols fans on Twitter all the time.
There's no way he would ever go back.
No. I think he is basically made it his life mission to just troll Volunteer fans.
Oh, he trolls everybody. He's hilarious. He trolled Nick Saban the other day.
Yeah, he did.
Nick Saban last year said you should have to win your conference to make it to the playoff, and then this year said that his team should make it to the playoff. And Lane Kiffin, just a little retweet with some laughs. It's a good time.
All I gotta say is Nick Saban is the best politician in Alabama. For sure. He runs that state.
Probably true.
Runs that state. But
so Tennessee
has not a lot of options.
Joke of a program.
The only two other names I can really think of, Les Miles. I feel like he would probably take that job, and then maybe Petrino leaving Louisville. But I feel like Vols fans.
I don't think Petrino's gonna leave Louisville again. Do you?
I mean,
you don't think he's done enough? He had a good enough time the last time he left Louisville?
I mean, he didn't really have a great time, but I also think Louisville is so toxic right now. I think he might be afraid he will slip up and get canned. So he might get out.
Didn't he sign a 10-year deal, though?
I mean, the last time he signed a 10-year deal at Louisville, he was coaching the Falcons within a year, so...
I guess it doesn't really matter. All right, the rest of the coaching carousel. Mike Riley, Nebraska, out for Scott Frost, the UCF coach. The reports of this really came out during UCF's game last weekend, so that was fun. Texas A&M, Kevin Sumlin out. Jimbo Fisher in
All right.
for Florida State. This was one where reports of this came out like a good week ago. And then nothing seemed to happen. Jimbo was still making like his regular appearances on
Talking about
Tallahassee.
loyalty.
Yeah, with
about
Tallahassee
coaching the program.
radios and it
Oh,
seemed like
Jimbo.
nothing was wrong, and then all of a sudden he was gone. And a 10-year, $80 million contract, the largest
Plus incentives.
the largest total money contract for any college football head coach ever. But you can't pay the players.
There's only two
yeah.
coaches worth that. One Saban, others Dabo. Don't at me.
What about Kirby? Kirby's pretty good.
Win something.
Wow. In the playoff, win something.
Hey, you know
I'm
what?
sorry, who's the SEC champion this year? That's right, not you. All right.
Still hadn't proven anything yet. Got win in the playoffs when the chips are on the table.
University of Florida, Jim McElwain out. He was fired a few weeks ago. Dan Mullen in. I've not heard one Florida fan that was happy about this hire.
I've heard a few, and they're more the Florida fans I trust on stuff like this, but there's a lot of Florida fans that are really just upset they didn't get Chip Kelly, which is kind of crazy because I think Mullen is a better coach than Chip
what
Kelly.
I heard, because my initial thought was good for UF. They got an old coach back. He's good. He really built this Mississippi State program up. He is
From
good at
scratch.
developing quarterbacks and offensive systems. But this is how it was explained to me, and I get this. Dan Mullen is a great coach that can win you 9 games every year. Every year. He's an outstanding Mark Richt type coach that's going to win 9,
absolutely.
10 games every year. But he is not going to win 11 or 12 games consistently.
And honestly, I think Florida fans kind of needed a reality check. Because a lot of them were wanting, kind of like Tennessee fans, they were wanting somebody like John Gruden or like Texas fans who were like really upset Bill Belichick didn't leave the Patriots
and
for Texas.
So this fan specifically, I work with him, and I very, very strongly trust his sports opinion. I would absolutely consider having him on the show. I trust his opinion so much.
Big step.
He really knows his football. He just would rather take shots at coordinators and riskier hires and have a chance to strike. And if you don't strike, then you win 5, 6, 7 games for a couple years and you try again. He'd rather do that than win 9 games a year.
Well,
he doesn't want to be Georgia of the last decade. He wants to be Florida of the last decade, where Florida hit on the hot guy, which was Urban Meyer.
Right.
Had a great run of success. He leaves, and they keep trying to find the next hot guy, and which is what they've done. Muschamp, McElwain, they were both at one point the hot guy.
Oh, absolutely.
And they didn't fire, so they win 5, 6, 7, 8 games. He would rather do that than be Georgia of the last decade, which has won less than 8 games once in the last decade under Mark Richt, but never has been a contender for the national title.
See, that's just a personal preference thing, honestly. Because
I guess, yeah.
I honestly think Dan Mullen can win you a championship at Florida because he's won the talent level he's had and gotten at Mississippi State is crazy. He goes up against Nick Saban, LSU with Les Miles, and now Coach O. Ole Miss, when Ole Miss was paying everybody to get them to come there. I mean, he's had
at least someone was paying the players. All right. That was
all right. Good old Hugh Freeze. All right. Woo. Anyway, so he's had one of the toughest roads consistently year in and year out at Mississippi State. Probably the toughest test of any school.
In arguably
the SEC West.
Yeah, in arguably the most difficult division in college football.
Think about how many national titles the SEC West has had.
Most of them in the last decade.
Exactly.
I actually think that's accurate.
No, that's very accurate. Alabama, Auburn
won twice. LSU won once. And Alabama won how many times? 4 in the last 10 years?
Yeah. Because 4 of the last 7.
Yeah, so 4 of the last
a lot.
10.
Let's just go with a lot.
That's 6 out of the last 10 years. The national champion was from the SEC West. That's because LSU won it in 2007, Auburn won it in 2010 and 2013, and Bama won it 4 other years. I don't remember which exactly. That's 6 out of the last 10 from one division. That's a tough road.
And you're at Mississippi State, who does not have a historic program. So Dan Mullen is a dang good coach.
I agree, and I argued this point, and I agreed, but I also saw what he was talking about. I love Mark Richt. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. I was tired of being a Mark Richt team.
Well, yeah, I know you were, because, I mean, it was consistently the same thing, but honestly, I think you need to give Dan Mullen a shot at Florida, because the hot hire was Scott Frost. But Scott Frost has too many ties to Nebraska, and he again said, thanks, but I'm not interested.
Right.
I mean,
well, he's an alum of Nebraska.
He's an alum of Nebraska, just had a baby, and his family's from Lincoln. I mean, there were too many ties to get him to go there. And honestly, after that, I mean, do you really think Chip Kelly's a better hire than Dan Mullen? Because, I mean, I don't.
I think it's a riskier hire.
I mean, if you really want risk, I mean, you can go a bunch of different routes, but I mean, if you keep going down the risk too often, then you stop being seen as a historic and great program, and then that hurts your recruiting for the guy who actually is a really good coach who's up and coming.
And that is a point that I also made, where UF has been for the last 10 years trending down.
Yes.
Because I think UF right now is a top 10 program, back into the top 10. We ranked it at work. We do a lot of work there.
Okay, yeah, I can tell.
We ranked it. Here's how we ranked it. This is off the top of my head. The ones ahead were like Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, USC, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan. That's 7. It was around the next few. Was where we put
schools,
UF.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a top 10 program. But you're right. The more you start to not be in the conversation, the farther and farther back you drift. Which Michigan was at risk of before they got Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, absolutely. Because it was a lot of... And they went the risky guy. And you saw what that... I mean, they hired Rich Rodriguez from West Virginia.
I really liked that hire at the time.
I did too.
I won't lie.
And you know what? He went in, implemented his system, changed everything, lost for a few years. Michigan fans hated him. And then they went to Brady Hoke, who was the hot hire from San Jose State, really doing some things out there. He did all right a couple years.
He won,
yeah. He won
games.
Exactly. And then didn't like him, lost really bad one year, gone. So, I mean, it's cool when you get like the, hot head coaching hire and it works out and it's really good and you have a lot of fun, but honestly, that doesn't happen that often.
Which is why it's risky.
For every Scott Frost, you have a Skip Holtz.
Well, and we don't even know if Scott Frost is going to work yet.
Exactly.
Like, you just used that as an example, but at one point, Skip Holtz was
the guy.
I was very excited about him getting the USF job because I thought he was going to turn it around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody did. Everybody thought it was a slam dunk. I mean, people were shocked he even left East Carolina. But that's the thing. I mean, can you really afford to take those risks at UF? Because UF hasn't been put in the best spotlight lately, and UF fans haven't either with, the different stuff showing up at McElwain's house and all that jazz.
Well, didn't that turn out being not true?
Some of that ended up, they couldn't find a lot of evidence, but the different banners around town talking about firing coaches and different stuff like that, it didn't paint them in a good light.
I agree.
That's more of what I was talking about than the death threat thing.
All right.
But it didn't paint them in the best light. So you get a guy who loves Gainesville and had a lot of great times there, good memories, and he's been an amazing football coach, and you convince him to come there.
He's been a good football coach. I would hesitate to use the word amazing.
I maybe went a little too strong.
A couple of people are amazing. Nick Saban.
Saban and Dabo. All right.
Dabo's amazing. Kirby Smart, anyone? I'm very happy with the job Kirby's done. I won't lie.
I told you, Kirby's a good coach. He's a good coach. But that's the thing. In the state of Florida, you can't afford to be down very long. You have Miami,
it's such a competitive
USF,
state.
UCF, FAU with Lane Kiffin's getting a lot of recruits down there. Florida State. I mean, it's tough, and
It's a loaded state.
every school recruits Florida too. So if UF is down, I mean, people just go to Tallahassee because they have good coach, good program, or they'll go to Miami with Mark Richt, go down there, hang out on the beach, something like that, or they'll just go because Kirby will get them out of Florida to go to Georgia.
Well, every school recruits out of Florida too. Is
Exactly.
the problem. Florida's such a talent-rich state. Everyone.
It's
comes
like
down.
Texas. It's very talent-rich.
California, Texas, and Florida. Those are the three. Those are the big
three hotbeds.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You can't really. That's just my thinking on that. I mean, your friend definitely has a point, but you can't really afford to just take a shot at, say, Brom, Purdue's coach, because he's a hot coaching hire right now.
Right.
I mean, you need somebody, and it's better to have ties to the university as well, at least in this case. But, I mean, you get a really good coach who I think has room for growth.
I agree. I thought it was a good hire. Anyway, and then the last big move was Chip Kelly getting the UCLA job. Chip Kelly's back in Pac-12 football.
Back in West Coast where he wants to be.
We'll see. He built an Oregon program that competed for a while, and we'll see. I think he'll be able to do the same thing. The Pac-12 is kind of weak right now.
Right. Just implement the offense, and don't have to worry about defense. So.
Yeah, I think he'll actually do a pretty decent job at UCLA. I think Chip Kelly's a good college coach.
Oh, I agree. I think he's good.
His system didn't work in the NFL, mostly because in college, you get 75 players, and the NFL, you get 53.
Right.
And what happens to your defense when they're on the field a lot because your offense either keeps scoring or goes 3 and out in about a minute and a half? They get tired. And in the NFL, you can't just keep switching guys because you only have a few.
Right.
In college, Nick Saban does this too.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Kirby Smart does. They'll switch guys every play. So the guys are always fresh and rested, and they don't wear out in the fourth quarter. That's why his system didn't work in the NFL. He's a good football coach.
Oh, he is.
And
he's a genius, too. I mean, he's an offensive genius.
I hesitate to use the word genius, but he's very, very good.
You know what I meant. Like, the offensive genius guy.
He's great at designing offenses.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, we'll see. He kind of, what we all sort of forgot was all the allegations that came out after he left Oregon about the sort of not great stuff he was doing there, like financially.
Kind of some shady things,
sort of like what Pete Carroll did at USC and then he bailed.
Oh, yeah.
Not quite that bad, but some stuff did go down that people seem to just forget about. So
right.
That's interesting.
And it should be interesting, but I actually talked with a few Florida fans about this. They're really upset he chose UCLA over Florida. And then I just kind of had to point out, it's like, the SEC is tough.
It's because he knows the Pac-12. He wants to go back to the Pac-12.
And, I mean, think about, you have more job security at UCLA than you would at Florida.
Look how long they let Jim Mora keep coaching.
Oh, I know.
He did a horrible job.
Jim Mora had one good year, and then he immediately ramped up his coaching reputation, got a huge contract extension. He was talking about NFL jobs, all this stuff. He's not a very good coach.
You should not have arguably the best quarterback in college football and not be able to win games. You just shouldn't.
Right, and he had two times in a row he's had arguably the best quarterback in college football, Brett Hundley and Josh Rosen, and then wasn't able to do anything with it. And he's supposed to be a quarterback guy. So,
oops.
Yep. Well,
you have anything else you want to talk about? Are we done? Are we over time?
We're about to be over time. I was going to get to another point, but we may have to tease that.
No, do it. We'll go quick. We'll be fast.
What about Herm Edwards? It's been rumored about the Arizona State thing.
Well, he interviewed for it. I don't think that's rumored. He definitely interviewed for the job.
And I'd heard somewhere, and I thought I saw somewhere where it was official he accepted, but...
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Selfishly, I would hate that because he might be my absolute favorite person at ESPN.
But he hadn't had any interest in coaching in a very long time, which leads me to believe...
for a while.
The only thing he really coaches is, some of Gruden's stuff for ESPN and then also the All-American game, which he really enjoys doing. But
is he from Arizona State? Why this job?
That's the interesting tidbit I found out. his agent, his former agent when he was a coach in the NFL, is the athletic director of Arizona State.
Interesting.
Which is a very odd connection because I found that very strange that out of nowhere Herm Edwards was going to Arizona State.
Yeah, Herm Edwards hasn't really been rumored for a coaching job in a while. He's been out of it for so long.
And part of that leads me to believe maybe he found something out about ESPN's next round of layoffs that maybe he's afraid of.
I understand why they would lay off Gruden, because I honestly think they're going to lose Monday Night Football.
Right.
You better not lay off Herm. Herm is
so... There's so many guys and ladies who we didn't think were going to get laid off that
Herm
did.
Is great, though. Herm is the best thing ESPN has. I
mean, Herm is amazing. Gruden's amazing, but I mean, ESPN cut a lot of people. And a lot of people were blindsided. So I think a lot of the guys,
another round of layoffs is coming.
Right, exactly. I mean, Aaron Boone, who's been on Sunday Night Baseball for years, just left to be the manager of the Yankees. Like, out of nowhere, has become the manager of the Yankees. That's just another thing.
Well, but that's one where I understand he has one thing that he does. He's on Baseball Tonight, and that's it. Herm goes to, like, all the different shows. They send him everywhere. SportsCenter. I almost said Mike and Mike. Go Look and Wingo. Might as well call it Mike and Mike. Who cares?
It was Mike and Mike. I mean, he was mainly on Mike and Mike.
He goes on all the shows, NFL Live, and they use his clips like crazy. It'd be a shame if they lost him. Maybe he got the itch back to want to go back to coaching. Maybe because he thinks John Gruden's going to get a head coaching job, he sort of got the itch for it. I don't know. I
mean, he always seemed to enjoy the All-American game. So, I mean, I think that just plays into it. He seems to really like grooming kids and young men kind of thing. So
yeah, that would make sense.
I mean, that's why going back to college may work for him.
I hope he does well. I love Herm. I'll be rooting for him against Chip Kelly if he goes.
Oh, absolutely.
If he goes to Arizona State.
Arizona State will instantly become my favorite team in the Pac-12.
Oh yeah,
like,
easily,
easy. Because Herm Edwards, it'd either be Wazoo or Arizona State would just instantly.
Nah, it's Arizona State. Come on.
I mean, come on, Mike Leach, Mr. Pirate. I mean, that dude's crazy, but he's awesome. But anyway, I think we're over time. We have to wrap the show up there. Thank you for coming back with us. Reach out to us on our website, social media, therolloutsports.com, at the Rollout Show, and just let us know what you think.
Yeah, we didn't get to a lot of stuff today, unfortunately. When you don't do a show for 3 weeks, a lot of news seems to build up.
And a lot of arguments seem to build up, as you witness with our paying the players thing, Bradley.
Look, we need to have a full show on that, because I have lots of opinions.
Clearly.
Look, man, don't let the man
keep them to yourself.
Ouch.
Keep them to yourself.
The people gotta know.
Gosh.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.